Welcome back to the weekly Education Pulse. I'm Sami.
I'm Tony. Each week we bring to you the latest updates shaping the international schools market around the world.
In this episode, we're heading to the Middle East, where two of the region's biggest education markets are making major moves.
We'll start in Dubai, where early childhood education is booming, with an 8% rise in enrolments and nearly 40 new centres opening across the city.
Then we'll head over to Saudi Arabia, where more than 30 new international schools are set to open between now and 2027, a sign of just how quickly the market is evolving under Vision 2030.
After the news, we'll be sharing insights from my latest article on the Strategic Planning Maturity Framework, a roadmap to help schools move from being reactive to resilient and ultimately anti-fragile.
So whether you're leading a school, managing a group, or just curious about how education strategy is changing across the world, you want to stick around for this one.
Well, let's get started.
And we start this week in Dubai, where the early childhood education sector is experiencing a real surge. So according to the KHDA, enrolment across nurseries and early learning centres has grown by 8% this year, with 38 new centres opening across the city.
It takes a total to 269 early years centres serving over 27,000 children aged from 45 days up to 6 years.
Exactly. The KHDA attributes this growth to a few major factors: Dubai's rising population of young families, continued urban development, and a growing awareness among parents of the long-term benefits of early childhood education.
We're also seeing how urban planning and education growth are intertwined. New centres are opening in areas like Dubai Hills, Al Bashar South, and Town Square, all communities that have seen a boom in housing for young professionals and first-time parents.
What's interesting is that this isn't just organic growth, it's increasingly strategic investment. The earlier segment has become one of Dubai's most competitive entry points for new education investors. We're seeing British and other international brands, as well as regional operators, setting up nurseries that serve as feeder pipelines into their K-12 schools.
Right, and that's something we've discussed before. School groups like Talim, Cognita, and even newer entrants are investing downward, expanding into the early childhood space to strengthen retention and build brand loyalty at that earliest stage.
It's also linked to the wider education policy context. The Emirati government has placed early childhood development as a pillar of its human capital strategy, connecting the early years learning to school readiness, social cohesion, and long-term well-being goals under Vision 2031.
The KHDA's role here is crucial. By publishing transparent data on growth, capacity, and even fee ranges, it's helping investors and families make informed decisions, something that has really professionalized the sector over the last 5 years.
And from a market standpoint, it's fascinating. A few years ago, nurseries were still seen as primarily a child care provider, and now they're treated as strategic educational hubs, many offering international curricula like the EYFS from the UK, Montessori, Reggio Emilia, or bilingual models aligned with the IB framework.
And the demand isn't just from expatriates anymore. Emirati families are also enrolling their children in private early education centres in growing numbers, particularly those that offer bilingual instruction or locally adapted frameworks.
The bigger picture here is one of confidence. Even as new school developments continue across Dubai, this growth in early childhood education shows that investor appetite remains strong, and that families see Dubai as a place to settle long-term, not just for short-term postings.
And it also sets the tone for the next decade. If the early years segment continues growing at this rate, we're looking at thousands of additional school-aged students entering K-12 pipeline in the next few years. Now, something both school groups and regulators are already planning for.
So from nurseries to national strategy, early childhood education has become one of Dubai's most dynamic and future-focused sectors, a space that's blending care, curriculum, and community in many ways that we haven't really seen before.
And from Dubai's early years boom, we move to Saudi Arabia, where the international schools market is expanding at an unprecedented rate.
Yeah, that's right. Between 2025 and 2027, the kingdom is set to welcome a wave of new international schools. And the pipeline includes major operators like Aldar Education, GEMS, Orbital, Cognita, and even the local operator Misk as well, looking to open new campuses across the kingdom.
It's a huge moment. Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 strategy places education at the heart of national transformation. And what we're seeing now is that policy translating directly into infrastructure.
Exactly. In just the past few years, the Education and Training Evaluation Commission and other government bodies have improved the licensing and accreditation processes for international operators, making entry far more structured and transparent than it once was.
Scale is impressive. In cities like Riyadh, Jeddah, Dammam, new developments are being planned with integrated education zones, entire neighborhoods designed around schools. It shows how education is being embedded into Saudi Arabia's urban growth model.
Yeah, the interesting thing is how diverse the supply is becoming. We're not just seeing British curriculum, we're also seeing the growth in American, IB, bilingual, and even hybrid learning models. That variety reflects Saudi Arabia's evolving population mix as well, with a growing middle class and a more mobile expatriate base.
Unlike previous years, when the market was largely expat driven, the big driver now is local demand. More Saudi families are choosing international schools because of their bilingual education, focus on global skills and pathways to universities abroad.
Yeah, our own ISC data actually backs this up. The proportion of Saudi nationals enrolled in international schools has steadily increased year on year. These families aren't just buying into a curriculum, they're buying into a vision of education that aligns with the kingdom's future economy.
And that future economy needs global skilled graduates. And that's why we're seeing this push for teacher training, digital transformation, and STEM specialization within new school frameworks, all aligned with the Vision 2030's human capital goals.
And what stands out to me is how competitive this market is becoming. Operators are investing heavily in design and facilities, performing art spaces, AI integrated classrooms, sustainability labs, all to appeal to a parent base that's becoming more discerning.
Almost like a new playbook for Saudi Arabia. Education is now a cornerstone of diversification, both as a public good and a private investment opportunity.
And, well, the timing couldn't be better. With the population under 35 still representing the vast majority of Saudis, the next 5 years could define the structure of the international education landscape for decades to come.
So while the global conversation often focuses on Dubai or Singapore, Saudi Arabia is fast emerging as one of the most influential education markets anywhere in the world right now.
Yeah, and from Saudi, well, let's move on to one of your recent articles, Tony. Upgrading your school strategy, the strategic planning maturity framework. And I love this because it takes what is often a fuzzy concept, strategic planning, and gives it real structure. So let's start at the top. What prompted you to write this?
Many schools would admit that the strategic planning is more reactive than proactive. They respond brilliantly when there's a crisis, but there's often no consistent framework guiding how they adapt or grow. This framework is designed to help schools understand where they are on that journey, from fragile to resilient to anti-fragile, and what it takes to move forward.
Yeah, and you describe those three stages as rise, safe, and lead, almost like a roadmap for improvement. Can you walk us through what each stage represents?
So rise is about moving from that reactive to having some structure. It's where schools build the basics. They use reliable data, align between leadership and governance, and have consistent processes. Safe is that resilient stage. Schools can adapt to shocks, maintain stability, and engage their community meaningfully. Lead is where it gets exciting. That's where the anti-fragile stage comes in, where schools benefit from disruption through experimentation, decentralized decision-making, and learning loops.
Yeah, quite like that. It's not just about surviving change, but thriving in it. So how does a school actually know what stage it's in?
That's a good question. The indicators are pretty visible once you start looking. A rise stage school is often firefighting, decisions made in response to immediate problems. By contrast, safe schools have planning, routines in place, data cycles, and they start looking at risk mitigation. When you reach the lead level, you see experimentation happening at every level. Staff feel empowered to test new ideas, and setbacks are treated as opportunities to learn.
That's a powerful shift in culture from fear of change to embracing it. But as you said, most schools start off fragile. So what's the hardest part about moving out of that reactive stage?
Obviously, it's alignment. In many schools, the board, leadership, and staff aren't always pulling in exactly the same direction. You might have strong intentions, but no common language for planning. RISE focuses on creating that shared structure, monthly review cycles, trend tracking, clarity over who decides what. Once that foundation exists, you can build resilience.
Okay, and then comes SAFE, the resilience stage. What tends to hold schools back there?
Comfort. The schools are steady, but they tend to become, sometimes they can be a bit too rigid. The next leap requires adaptability, scenario planning, empowerment of middle leaders, scanning for future trends. It's all about building optional pathways, not just one fixed plan.
Okay, and well, then that actually then leads us to LEAD, the anti-fragile stage, which builds on your earlier writing about turning disruption into growth opportunity. So what distinguishes schools that reach that level?
They normalize experimentation. They don't wait for disruption. They run controlled pilots, capture lessons, scale what works. Decision making is decentralized, so responses are faster. It's a culture of curiosity and learning rather than compliance.
Yeah, and you also, in your article, you outline 4 core principles behind that. I think it was learning loops, experimentation, adaptable options, and decentralized decision making. Those are great anchors for leadership teams.
Exactly. And they give schools a structure for agility. For example, a school piloting an AI-based feedback tool might track outcomes, adjust practice, and embed what works into its next strategic cycle. That's a learning loop in action.
Yeah, so for schools listening to this right now, where should they start? What's the first step towards upgrading their strategy?
First, assess where you're at. Now, and do that honestly. Are you mostly reactive, mostly stable, or already experimenting? Then identify the gaps. Maybe it's a lack of data routines or staff engagement. After that, prioritize small wins. Run one pilot project, introduce a new review process, or widen participation in planning. Now, strategic maturity isn't a single project, it's a cultural progression.
Yeah, I like that. Small steps, but deliberate ones. And yeah, it feels achievable.
Exactly. And every school can upgrade. The challenge isn't whether you can reach that lead anti-fragile status, it's committing to a journey to get there.
Yeah, well said. So for anyone leading strategy in their school, this is essential reading and a framework that really translates big ideas into practical action.
And that wraps up this week's Weekly Education Pulse.
Yeah, thanks for joining us as we explored the latest developments shaping education across the Middle East, from Dubai's booming early years sector to Saudi Arabia's ambitious wave of new international schools.
A big thanks for tuning in to our deep dive into the Strategic Planning Maturity Framework, a practical guide for schools ready to move from reacting to leading.
It's a reminder that growth and innovation don't just happen at the system level. They start within schools, with leaders willing to rethink how they plan, adapt, and evolve.
And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts. How's your school adapting its strategy for the future? Drop a comment and join the conversation.
We'll be back next week with more global insights and analysis from across the international school sector.
Until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.